back to another episode of Focusing, and I'm your host, Ethan. Last week, I wasn't really able to work on an episode. I had some family stuff to deal with, so yeah, I wasn't able to sit down and just, even work on a script. So today's a grab bag episode. I figured that's something I should try out, something that's just been on my mind, and it probably won't be scripted, but, it's just my thoughts on what I'm feeling right now in terms of photography. So the topic I wanted to discuss is what it means to be a photographer, right? While people may see the the money value in it, the monetary value in it, like, oh, it pays well and there's so much money in it, it's expensive and all these things. I mean, like, for me, I can understand where people are like, where they can see that, but me, I'm more in it for the passion, right? And my thing is, when it comes down to passion, like, when you do things right and you're passionate about it, you don't care how low you have to go. And I could be wrong on this, but you don't care how low you have to go when you're passionate about something. You don't care how far you have to go to do it because it's your passion. It's something you want to do, and you're willing to go to any depth to get it done, right? And that's me when it comes down to, honestly, this podcast, honestly, this my photography. There's a lot of gear I could get and whatnot, but I choose not to. Not because I per se want to stay amateurish, but at the same time, it's like, when you're passionate about something, you don't care what you have right now. You work with what you have, right? You want to do, and you just want to do and create. And that's honestly how I feel about photography, right? And that's what, and I, like, when I was like a beginner photographer, I always kind of complained. I was like, I have nowhere to go. I can't, take any pictures anywhere. I can't go out. But then use that as a way to, like, expand your creativity, right? No matter, like, where you are, be like, hey, you know what? I want to be creative. Let me look at this from a creative angle, there's endless possibilities with creativity, because creativity is subjective. And even the question I'm asking today, what does it mean to be a photographer? I personally think that's a subjective answer, right? For others, it might be just capturing a moment. That's my thing, right? For others, it may be because they want monetary value out of it. They want recognition. They like to create art with cameras. There's nothing wrong with it, but for me, like I said, it's just having that passion there, that fire to get it done. Fire, that passion, that fire to want to just do what you want to do, because it makes you happy, right? I think that's another component of just, being passionate about something, is when you're just happy doing it, I mean, there's other values. I mean, like, for example, if you have like a job, and maybe it's a job you do want, but it's not paying well, as well, or it's not paying enough to, like, keep you afloat, then yeah. But then outside of that, I mean, having a passion, man, it goes a long way, because then you have that fire, you want to do something, you get as creative as possible, right? I could have just stayed at just doing photography, but I decided to do this podcast because I'm passionate about doing my podcast. I feel like I'm personally, as a person, I'm good at talking to a lot of people. I'm good at being social. I'm good at talking in general, I could work on a few areas, don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect, but I personally feel as if I'm really good at talking to people, So it's definitely something I would want to do. So I started this podcast in a way to, like, just talk about, like, my interest in photography and, like, all these things, all the things I explained in the first episode, But definitely, I really just enjoy having this job. I say having this job, but still, like I said, it's really my passion to do these things, And besides photography, I like doing, coding. I like all that type of stuff, computers, hardware and software side. I really enjoy those things. So yeah, having a passion, it really goes a long way. Being a photographer, I see a lot of other photographers. For example, I see on my Instagram, like, all their pictures kind of look the same. And I get they're in the city area and whatnot. I mean, that's the best spots. I mean, you can still get creative there, but it just feels like that's the default way to go, being a photographer. Because eventually I want to ramp up to a photographer, but there's a lot of photographers I see usually are just based in, like, Japan or New York. And, like, there's nothing wrong with that, right? I have nothing against these photographers. These are really great photographers and editors, but I look at them just like, okay, it's not as creative, I guess, to me. It's just not as creative, and I don't know why. Or I'll take that back. I do know why. It all feels the same. Everything just feels the same. And I look at it and I'm like, all right, this is pretty good, but then the content you're pushing out, man, like, it all feels the same. I mean, unless you have like a model or something like that. I know the photographer Koki Yamaguchi, which is actually one of my favorite photographers. He's based. I think he's either based in Japan or New York. He's been to both. At the very least, he's been to both New York and Japan. Yeah. So he has a series, and I highly recommend you watch his series. I think it's called Streets or Portraits. I highly recommend you watch that series. It's really good. Another the photographer I watch, his first name is Ulysses. I forgot his last name. It's already like I think it starts with like A or a Y. I don't know, but he's another photographer too. He gives tips on photography, but yeah, when it comes down to, and to go back to the question, like what it means to be a photographer and all, because then being a photographer doesn't necessarily mean you need a mirrorless or DSLR camera, because you can have an analog camera too. I see that's kind of the aesthetic some people really go for, and they really stick to that aesthetic, and I really like it. Some people will take pictures and do all these things and with the analog cameras, and I think personally you can be more creative with analog cameras because you only have like a selective amount of roll or film. Sorry, not roll. You only have a selected amount of pictures you can take. So I think like the average roll is like what 36 pictures. I could be wrong on that. The average roll is about 36 pictures, and when you have a limit, you get more creative, and that's my thing, right? When you have unlimited possibility, you can still be creative, but you're not as creative because then you're not forced to be creative. You're not forced to like open your creative eye and all that type of stuff. So that's honestly really it. I just feel like you can be really creative when it comes down to photography, and it just honestly depends on what you do. I saw this ad. I forgot which company it was, but she's like a biology photographer, and she like puts her camera in the not telescope, sorry, microscope. She puts her camera in, she takes picture of like food and stuff like that. I'm like, that's pretty cool, that's interesting. That's what I like. That's the type of photography I like, when it's interesting and it's not just the same old thing. I just really like that type of stuff. So being a photographer, it really does depend on you. I think it's a really subjective question. I think the last time, weirdly enough, I asked this person at a I asked this person at I'm trying to remember here. I was doing a photo shoot, kind of. I was doing something, and I walked up to this. He was another photographer, and I asked him. I was like, "Hey, how do you think I can improve my pictures, this and that?" He told me two things. One thing stuck with me. The other, I think, was a joke, but I don't think he was joking. He told me go to law school, and I was like, "What?" He was like, "Yeah, go to law school, and I'll help you become a photographer." I don't have the money to go to law school. Trust me. All right, I have the grades, but I don't have the money to go to law school. But another thing he told me, right, and this stuck with me ever since I met him. He said, "Create your own inspiration." I don't know if he originally said that or somebody else said that, and he just kind of uses it as like his mantra or his motto. But that's something I definitely would like to spread to everybody. Every photographer listening to this, or anybody creating a creative space at all, create your own inspiration. And it took me a few days to decipher what he was talking about. But I sat down and thought about it, and I was like, when you create your own inspiration, you make your own work. You get inspired by your own work and see, okay, how can I do this better? How can I do this better? What can I do to fix this? What can I do next time that it's more easy for me? And because when you're inspired by others, you tend to just want to do what they want to do, right? With inspiration, you can be inspired by somebody, but then you might end up just doing what they want to do, and it's like you don't want that. You want to create your own inspiration and go your own path, right? Because I remember one of my friends, she was talking to me about this, and she was like, the guy who painted Mona Lisa, he was just painting some random lady, and now look, it's one of the most famous paintings in the world. So honestly, you never know. The next shot could be that $1 million shot. You really never know. And that's the cool thing about photography, is that you always keep going. There's never like a stop to it. There's never like okay, I'm going to stop, taking pictures now because I reach a certain skill level or whatnot. It just never stops. It keeps going, the hustle, the grind keeps going with photography. It took me 2 years to learn how to use my camera, but you always have to start from somewhere. You have to sit down and just be passionate and take the time out. That's the thing. That's a lot of things people don't realize, when you're passionate about something, I mean, if you can, you will fit it in your schedule. Trust me. When you're passionate about the people, People make excuses and all and saying, I don't have the time, I'm too busy. And that's how I am. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not gonna take myself out of it and be like I'm some perfect person. No, that's how I was with this podcast. One of the graduates from my school, I talked to her about a few years ago, and she was like, you should start a podcast. And I was like, I should start a podcast, but I don't have the time, I don't have the space and all these things. And she's like, start a podcast, right? And then years later, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, I was talking to somebody and they were like, yo, you should start a podcast. You think that'd be really cool? And I was like, you know what? Literally the same day, like literally the same day of my first episode, that was the day I actually put up my podcast. I believe that was August 8th. So that was a few days ago. I think it was about, it could be wrong, like, I don't want to say 16 days ago, but it was more than 10, right? But yeah, so when you're passionate about something, you will find the time, you will find the space to get it done. And that's what I want to spread to people, when you're passionate about something, do it. In the words of Al Roker, what's stopping you? What's stopping you from doing what you want to do? You just have to get it done. You just have to get it done no matter what. What's stopping you today, right? Like I came back, I was heading out today and I came back and I was tired. I'm not going to lie. I was tired. But then I also said, you know what? What's physically stopping me right now from doing what I want to do? The only thing stopping you is yourself. And this is something I'm still learning too. So don't think I'm just a super perfect person. You know, I'm struggling with this too. And I think a lot of people struggle with it too, but you just have to get up and find that fire and keep going. Even if I didn't really care, like a lot of people who are listening to my podcast, I don't care, right? As much as I want the recognition and whatnot, I don't care because it's my passion. I want to just at least be out there and say, hey, I'm doing something because I want to do it. Not because somebody else wants me to do it, because I want to do it. I'm doing photography because I want to do it. I want to take pictures and I want to take that next $1 million shot. That's my thing right there. A lot of people don't really see it like that. So, but you just have to get up, man. You have to make sure that everything's right and you have to get it done because nothing is stopping you but yourself. And that's why I want to inspire people about. I know the topic of this podcast was what it means to be a photographer. And to me personally, what it means to be a photographer, like I said, is to capture that moment, capture the shot, capture memories. Even if it's just doing personal photography, capturing stuff like flowers and whatnot. It may seem minuscule, but to me, it's like, it helps me train myself, because it's like, okay, what can I do better? Picture was too bright. Okay, I lower ISO. ISO is too low. Okay, I ramp it. I crank it back up. You learn and you learn every time you do it. Like you're never perfect at photography, no matter what camera you have, right? Like I could give somebody the camera I have right now, and I can go back to my old Coolpix, and I can almost bet you I would take better pictures, right? But it really does depend on like your mindset, right? Being a photographer or just being in a creative space at all, it really does depend on your mindset and how creative you can get with your photography. Because like I said, the guy who drew Mona Lisa, he was just drawing some random lady. Now look, it's one of the most famous paintings in the world because you never know. You just have to put in the effort and put in the grind. But make sure that your goal isn't just there's no end goal, right? It's weird, right? Like when you're doing something, you don't want there to be you want an end goal, like you want to reach a certain point. At the same time, you have to keep going afterwards. Don't get comfortable. That's another thing. When you're doing something you're passionate about, don't ever get comfortable. You always have to stay on your feet, always stay on your toes, because then you just have to keep going, keep the grind going, No matter what life throws at you, you just got to get back up, scrape it off, because then now you learn. Now you really learn, So that's today's episode. It was a little bit more shorter. I just didn't have time to really write up a script, but next week or the next episode, the week after next week, I'm going to have a very interesting topic to talk about. I'm going to work on that script. I'll have time to work on that script, definitely. But yeah, we're going to talk about, I'm not going to spoil it. Actually, you're going to wait until next episode for that to drop. But wish everybody a happy weekend. I hope their week was all right. And yeah. Oh, I guess I forgot to mention, I started my senior year, and I'm really proud. That was actually one of the inspirations for making this episode of like what it means to be a photographer. You know, started my senior year, and I've been at that school since sixth grade, so it's been 6 years. You know, looking back on all my school years, a lot has happened. A lot of things that I thought knocked me down. I was like, here I am, still standing. Even if you don't realize it, you're still standing against a lot of odds. You're still standing and still going, and that's what matters the most. Even in photography, I make mistakes. Sometimes the photo is too bright. Sometimes I miss the moment. I think in my first photo shoot, it was a wedding. I think I actually missed the kissing of the groom and bride, and I was like, oh no, I should have been more prepared. My camera was kind of acting up because I was like taking so much pictures. The SD card got hot, so it couldn't write any pictures on it. But next time, like I said, now you have that experience to go, and that's the thing. You have to make mistakes in life in order to learn, even if you don't realize it. It's not like you intentionally mess up, but when you do mess up, you just got to keep going because it is what it is. But I wish everybody, a good week back. If you're in the education system, welcome back to teaching. I hope that goes well. And everybody listening to this, I hope you're doing well. And you guys have a good week. Until next time, focusing.